Assalamualaikum. So this week we are going to start with the new topic, job costing and batch costing. So the learning outcomes for this topic are, at the end of the lesson, students should be able to define the nature and purpose of job and batch costing, explain the application of the overhead absorption rate to job costing, calculate the profit on markup and margin, and the last learning outcome would be to calculate the quoted price of a product. So let me start with job costing. Job costing is a method to determine costs, including the materials, labor, and overheads for a project or any specific orders from a customer. Such an approach helps to trace the costs of particular customer orders, and it also helps a company to see if it can reduce the cost in future projects. Moreover, it also helps to determine if a company can bill any excess charges to the client. That is job costing. So, what is batch costing? Batch costing is an extension of job costing. A batch may represent a number of small orders or group of identical products passed through the factory in batch. Each batch is treated as a cost unit and cost is ascertained separately. The cost per unit is determined by dividing the cost of the batch by the number of units produced in a batch. The manufacturers of biscuits, garments, spare parts, components mainly use this method. So basically, we have covered the first learning outcome, which is describing the nature and purpose of job and batch costing. And I hope from my explanation, you can see the difference between a job and a batch costing. Now, moving on to learning outcome 2. Okay, I'm going to explain the application of overhead absorption rate to a job costing. So to illustrate this, okay, to explain how the overhead absorption rate is applied in the job costing, we need to see at one example. Okay, so what we have here is job number 58, which passes through three departments, okay, X, Y, and Z, and the following information is given regarding to the job. So we have the materials issued to job for each department, direct labor hours for job, rate of direct labor per hour, sale of scrap materials arising from the job, total overhead for the departments, and total labor hours for the departments. So all the details, okay, given, okay, for each department are in the table. Okay, so to calculate the cost for this job, okay, basically for the materials, for the direct labor, it is very straightforward. Okay, however, all right, to calculate for the overhead, we need to determine, okay, the overhead to be absorbed for each department by using the respective basis, okay, for each department. So as we can see in the yellow box, all right, for department X, okay, basically we take the total overhead for department X and we divide with the basis of the overhead in department X. So in this question, okay, in this example, okay, the basis for overhead for department X is total labor hours. All right, and then we multiply, okay, to absorb, to show the cost absorbed to the job, okay, we multiply the overhead absorption rate that we derived from the previous formula, okay, we multiply with the labor hours in the department, okay, in the respective department for that particular job. So for department X, basically we have the total overhead of 10,000, okay, and the total labor hours for department X is 10,000 labor hours. So basically the overhead absorption rate, okay, for department X, okay, is at RM1 per direct labor hour. Okay, 10,000 divided by 10,000, so RM1, okay, or in this case $1, okay, per direct labor hour. And the amount of direct labor hours, okay, working for the job, okay, in completing the job is 1000 hours, right? As we can see from the table given, okay, direct labor hours for job 1000 hours. So we multiply with the 1000 hours, and that will give us $1000 for department X, okay. And we do the same for department Y and Z, okay, where basically we determine the overhead absorption rate by dividing the total overhead for the respective department, okay, and with the basis, okay. In this question we are using the total labor hours, okay, and we multiply the overhead absorption rate derived, okay, with the direct labor hours for the job, okay, performed by the labor in each department, okay. So as you can see in the yellow box, okay, we have calculated, okay, the overhead absorption rate for department X, Y, and Z, and the overhead, okay, the total overhead to be absorbed to the job for each department X, Y, and Z. Once we have determined the overhead absorption rate and the total overhead to be absorbed to each department, okay, we insert the calculation. All right, we insert the amount, the cost of overheads into the job cost sheet as shown in this table, okay, in order to determine the total cost for that particular job. Now, moving along to learning outcome 3, okay, where students should be able to calculate the profit or markup and margin. So for your information, okay, markup and margin is another terms used to describe profit. Okay, so in the next slide, I will show you how to determine the profit, okay, given a markup and a margin. As for the next learning outcome, okay, learning outcome number 4, okay, from the calculated profit, okay, students must be able to calculate the quoted price given the equation of cost plus profit equal selling price. Okay, in this video, I am going to illustrate you, okay, the markup. So given a basic equation of C, okay, plus P, okay, equals to SP, where C is the cost, P is the profit, in this case, markup, and SP stands for the selling price. Okay, in markup, C, which is the cost, would always equals to 100%. And let's say the profit, okay, the profit percentage or the percentage of profit is 20%. That will give us a selling price, a total selling price of 120%. Okay, derived from this equation, right? Cost 100% and the percentage of markup of 20%. And since the equation stated that C plus P, in this case markup, equals to selling price, so 100% of cost plus 20% of profit would give 120% of selling price. Okay, so if the cost, let's say, is 80 ringgit. Okay, let's say the cost is 80 ringgit. So 80 ringgit is represented by 100%. And the markup is 20%, meaning that, okay, what we need to do is we multiply, okay, 80 ringgit with 20%. That will give us the value of markup, which in this case it would equal to 16 ringgit. Okay, so cost is 80 ringgit plus the markup of 16 ringgit, and as such the selling price will be 96 ringgit. Okay, this is how you derive the profit, okay, and the selling price using markup. Okay. Now, what about margin? Okay. In markup, the cost is 100%, but in margin, okay, selling price is represented by 100%. And if the profit, okay, if 20%, then it will give us a cost of 80% because due to this equation, okay, when C equals to 80%, okay, and P equals to 20%, right? Since selling price is determined by C plus P, then it will give us a selling price of 100%. Okay, so let's say we use the same example as markup, okay, where the cost in the previous example is 80 ringgit. So how we determine the profit and the selling price? Okay, so to determine the selling price, right? This is selling price. Okay, to determine the selling price, okay, basically we take the 80 ringgit and divide by the percentage represented by it. Okay, so 80 ringgit is the cost, and the percentage represented by this 80 ringgit is 80%. So we divide with 80%, or we write it as 0.8. Okay, and this would give us 100 ringgit. So this is our selling price. RM 100 ringgit. Okay, so the profit, right? If the selling price is 100 ringgit, okay, and the cost is 80 ringgit, okay, back to this equation, right? Cost 80 ringgit. I rewrite it down, okay. Cost is 80, right? And selling price is 100. That will give us a profit of 20 ringgit. Right? So this is how we do the margin. Okay? In markup, okay, cost is 100%. But in margin, okay, the selling price is 100%. Alright?
And welcome to another video from Fast Business Skills series. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about markup versus margin. These are two different terms that sometimes are being misplaced by one another. And in this video, I'm going to explain the difference between them. So if I just simply go ahead and show the formula for each, you can see that markup is profit divided by cost, which gives us the markup, but margin is profit divided by retail price, or the price that you're selling your products and services. So let's do an example. Let's say that we have a product which we sell for $9. So this would be our retail price. And it costs us $5 to make. So this would be our cost. If we try to calculate the markup here, then our markup would be a profit, which is $4, divided by $5, which is our cost, equals to 0.8, or we can simply say 80%. So we have 80% markup for this particular product. Now, if you want to calculate the margin, what we have is we have the profit, which is $4. I'm going to do it here. $4 divided by $9, which is our retail price, equals to 44, or we can simply say 44%. So you can see that the margin and markup are totally different numbers, and of course the formula is very different. So you should be very careful when you talk about these two in any business context.
I hope everyone is clear with the explanation on markup and margin. So now let's test your understanding. I have prepared few questions for this video. So let's begin. Question 1. What will be the price of a good that costs 200 ringgit with a markup of 20%? Okay, so how do we determine the price? Okay, that costs 200 ringgit with a markup of 20%. So recall back, okay, on the total equation and recall back, okay, the calculation of profit if it is on markup, okay, and from there you could actually determine the selling price. So what is the answer? What do you think the answer would be? Is it the red circle, the yellow circle, or the green circle? Did I hear someone says the green circle? Yes, it is the green circle. Okay, when the cost of the good is at 200 ringgit and the markup is 20%, it means that, okay, to determine the selling price, basically you take the amount of the cost, 200 ringgit, and multiply with 1.2, where the 2 represents the 20%, okay, on top of the cost that is 100% in the cost equation, okay, because markup represents 100% total cost. Now moving on to question 2. What will be the price of a good that costs 200 ringgit with a margin of 20%? Tick tock, 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 tick tock. Remember, when it comes to margin, okay, the selling price will be represented by 100%. And if the margin is 20%, then the cost will be only 80%. So what would your answer be? Is it the red circle, the yellow circle, or the green circle? Did I hear someone says the yellow circle? Yes, it is the yellow circle. 250 ringgit. Awesome. You are good. Now, what about this? Which one is the correct equation in determining cost? Is it the red circle, the yellow circle, or the green circle? How would you determine cost? Okay, which is the correct equation? Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. I believe someone is saying the red circle. Okay, is it the red circle? Affirmative? Yes, of course it is the red circle. Okay, basically cost equals to, okay, selling price minus profit. Since, okay, in my slide I showed you that selling price equals to cost plus profit. Okay, so when we reverse the equation, okay, to determine the total cost, it will be selling price minus the profit. Good job. Okay, well done, well done. All right. Okay, you can try few more questions, okay, at quizzes by scanning the QR code, okay, and enter the code given. All right. Have fun and all the best.